When a country's currency collapses, when investors flee, and headlines scream crisis, one institution always appears like clockwork: the International Monetary Fund. To some, the IMF is a global firefighter, stabilizing economies on the brink. To others, it's the arsonist who hands out water after lighting the match. But what does the IMF really do during a currency crisis? And why does it always seem to show up at the moment of maximum pain? Let's start with a pattern. A country runs persistent deficits, spending more than it earns, importing more than it exports, borrowing in foreign currency to fill the gap. For years, it works fine. Then something breaks. A trade shock, an election, a geopolitical event, or simply a loss of confidence. The local currency begins to slide. Investors rush for the exits. The central bank burns through reserves trying to defend the exchange rate. The harder they fight, the faster the market tests them. Eventually, the reserves run out. The peg breaks. The exchange rate freefalls. Inflation surges. Imports collapse. The country's external debts, often denominated in dollars, explode in real terms. Overnight, the government, the banks, and the corporations owe more than they can ever repay. That's when the IMF steps in. The IMF doesn't arrive uninvited. A country has to ask for help. That request triggers negotiations known as a program. The fund offers money, often billions of dollars, but it comes with strings. Policy reforms, fiscal tightening, interest rate hikes, currency liberalization. The package is designed to restore confidence, stabilize the exchange rate, and prevent contagion. But the medicine is brutal. Imagine being the finance minister of a country in freefall. The IMF team arrives with spreadsheets, targets, and timelines. You're told, cut subsidies, raise taxes, stop printing money, float your currency, and open your markets. In theory, these are steps towards stability. In practice, they trigger recessions, job losses, and protests. The street calls it austerity. The fund calls it discipline. So what's really going on? To understand that, you have to know what the IMF's real role is, and it's not charity. The IMF is the lender of last resort for countries, but its ultimate mission is to protect the global financial system. Its first priority isn't your domestic growth or unemployment. It's ensuring that global creditors get repaid, contagion doesn't spread, and confidence returns to international markets. That's why IMF programs are structured the way they are. They aim to restore solvency and credibility, not comfort. By raising interest rates, they defend the currency. By cutting spending, they reassure bondholders. By floating exchange rates, they make exports cheaper and imports more expensive, forcing external adjustment that corrects imbalances, often painfully. Now, critics argue that these policies come at a devastating human cost. They point to Latin America in the 1980s, Asia in 1997, Argentina in 2001, Greece in 2010, Sri Lanka in 2022. Each time the same story, an IMF bailout that stabilizes the numbers but leaves scars on the people. Poverty spikes. Inequality widens. Local industries collapse under imported competition. Political instability follows. Defenders counter that the IMF doesn't cause the crisis, it responds to it. The pain, they say, was inevitable because the model was already broken. The fund's job is to clean up, not to comfort. And in many cases, it works. South Korea recovered spectacularly after its 1997 crisis. Brazil regained market access. Mexico rebuilt credibility. But even in success stories, the cost is enormous. To understand how the IMF operates, follow the flow of money. When it lends, the funds don't just sit in domestic coffers. They often flow straight back out, repaying external creditors, stabilizing reserves, or anchoring the exchange rate. The fund's resources act as a signal. The world's most powerful financial institution is betting on this country's recovery. That signal often stops the panic. But it also reaffirms the hierarchy. Global capital gets paid first. And that's why the IMF is both essential and controversial. Without it, many countries would spiral into hyperinflation or default. With it, they surrender sovereignty, at least temporarily. The government becomes an executor of IMF policy. Budgets, taxes, subsidies, interest rates, all negotiated in Washington or Geneva. For democracies, that's politically toxic. For autocracies, it's convenient cover. We didn't cut subsidies, the IMF made us. But behind the bureaucracy lies a deeper truth. The IMF is not just about economics. It's about power. Voting rights inside the fund are based on financial contributions, meaning the United States and its allies hold the largest sway. That shapes decisions, who gets help, on what terms, and when. Developing nations often argue that the system reflects post-war realities, not modern multipolarity. Yet reform moves slowly because those with power rarely vote to dilute it. The IMF's conditionality, those famous reforms, are meant to fix structural weaknesses. Liberalize trade. Improve tax collection. Strengthen central banks. Cut wasteful subsidies. In theory, these steps build resilience. In practice, they often happen under duress, when a nation has no bargaining leverage. Reforms made under panic are rarely sustainable. But there's another side to the IMF that often goes unseen. Over the last 2 decades, it's changed, slightly. There's more talk of social safety nets, protecting the poor, and calibrating austerity. After the Asian financial crisis, the fund acknowledged that it underestimated the depth of recession its policies triggered. In the 2020 pandemic, it acted faster, with fewer strings. Some say it's evolving. Others say it's just better at PR. The truth is probably both. The IMF is still the global backstop, the insurer of last resort. But in a world of deglobalization, capital controls, and new power blocks, its dominance is being tested. China's Belt and Road loans, regional development banks, and currency swaps offer alternatives. Countries now have options, and that changes the fund's leverage. So what happens the next time a currency crisis hits? The same dance, but with more players. A country's reserves evaporate. The currency plunges. Foreign debt balloons. The IMF arrives, but so do bilateral lenders, sovereign funds, and sometimes Beijing. The negotiation table grows longer, the politics thicker. And yet, for all the criticism, the IMF remains the only institution that can move tens of billions quickly, coordinate global support, and anchor expectations. Its presence, even controversial, prevents collapse from turning into contagion. That's why even countries that curse it eventually call it. But let's be honest, the IMF is not a savior. It's a system. One designed to keep the global financial order intact. When it helps you, it's really protecting the structure you operate in. It's the invisible scaffolding of capitalism, stabilizing, self-interested, and indispensable all at once. So the next time a currency collapses and you hear that the IMF is helping, remember what that really means. Stability comes with conditions. Recovery comes with control. And every bailout is a trade, short-term relief for long-term reform or dependence. The smart nations don't just survive the IMF. They learn from it. They build buffers, diversify funding, and reform before crisis forces them to. Because by the time the fund knocks on your door, the bill has already been written, and it's always due in full. If this helped you understand the hidden mechanics behind global finance, hit like, share it with someone who still believes bailouts are free, and subscribe. Because in this channel, we decode the systems that rule the money before they rule you.